Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. Well, I was not expecting to have one of these, but this is my COVID episode. I well, I did have a positive PCR test. I don't know, a year or two ago. I'm convinced that there was something wrong with the lab then because it was just like a screening and didn't really have any symptoms. I could have had an asymptomatic infection then, but it just didn't seem very plausible. And I got a follow up test a couple days later that was negative. So maybe I had it, but I don't know. I kind of am doubtful. But this time I'm pretty fucking sure. So I very stupidly agreed to go to San Francisco on a business trip. And, well, I wore an N95 in the lift both ways to the airport. Wore one most of the time I was there while I was on the plane. Did not wear one while we were eating. We ate outside, but still. Um, Ended up one of the people that was there, works for me, had it. They were positive. Didn't realize, or they didn't realize until like the last day. Uh, we were there for, well, 2 nights, 3 days. So on the middle day, they felt a little off the next day, took a test, were positive. Um, I was negative then and negative several days later. So thought that I was, I guess a couple days later, thought that I was okay. But, and I'm kind of don't think that I got it from them, although that was my most direct contact because we were in enclosed space, well, big open warehousey kind of space, but still enclosed, together for a while, and we were also like eating together unmasked for a while. So it's possible, but I'm kind of leaning more toward the literally handful of people who were at the airport um, coughing and visibly sick. I don't know for a fact that they had COVID, but yeah. And the worst thing is, of course, they're coughing, they're visibly sick, and they're at the fucking airport and they're not wearing masks, of course. It's one thing is just like, I'm a little, honestly, a little bitter about this. Hopefully, it doesn't get any worse than it has been. It's not been too bad, but I know sometimes, people seem like they're okay, and then 10 days in, they get severe symptoms. Cautiously optimistic that won't happen, but who knows? Um, but I'm just bitter about the whole fucking thing because this is not necessary, and it's not just. I mean, to be fair, I could have avoided it by not traveling. I'm very sure about that. I don't know if it was, you know, I don't know who it was. I don't really blame them. Although, if it was one of the people who was sick at the airport coughing and unmasked, then maybe I do blame them. In fact, I would certainly. But I wouldn't blame somebody for taking reasonable precautions and still communicating it to me. But what I would do is blame really Joe Biden and the CDC director for things that I've complained about many, many times. But I mean, like changing the community transmission levels metric to community levels, which is weird because community levels sounds like what you would want. Like it sounds like, oh, this is the level of COVID in the community. And yet in reality, it's just, I mean, the metric is just absurd. Yeah, it's not straightforward. It's not an obvious thing that you would pick. I guess you could say, like, oh, we're trying to measure, I mean, in fact, this is what they do say. We're trying to measure the impact on healthcare facilities and all this kind of stuff and some other bullshit. But that's the thing. This doesn't need to be controlled in that way. This could be, this is not something where it's like, yeah, everybody's going to get it, but we need to throttle it. This is something where literally we could have it totally under control. We have effective vaccines, despite the anti-vaxxer claims otherwise. Of course, only like 2/3 of the country and big chunks of the world are not even vaccinated, but yeah, we could push on that. And we also have these very powerful epidemiological tools. We have our phones, which give us the ability to do contact tracing. Um, the fact that that's not just built into our phones, I mean, it kind of, the thing that's absurd is the software exists, it's developed. And, it's just literally kind of a matter of switching stuff on and deciding to use it. Just like if we have wallet on iPhones, we could have our Vax cards in there that could be checked everywhere you go. Um, yeah, there are just so many things that could have been done. And this is just such an abject failure of public health. And it's like if this was the 1920s, um, maybe you could understand, maybe you could accept it. But for the 2020s, when we have all this technology, we have tests that are much better. We could have spun up like rapid PCR testing and made that universal. It's much more sensitive than the rapid antibody tests. So I took basically Sunday, I had my first presentation of symptoms. Saturday, I felt a little tired, or drained, but I didn't think anything of it. In retrospect, it's like maybe. But Sunday morning, I felt shitty. I had a sore throat. I was like, and put on N95 again, trying not to infect my former partner, we were at a hotel in Flagstaff over the weekend. There did not really have any significant contact with anybody, but basically was wearing a mask from the point that I had presentation of symptoms. I took a test. My test was negative. And again, like these fucking rapid antigen tests, they're very good. The technology is cool. They're kind of magical, but they're also not that sensitive. They don't have any amplification in them. So unlike the nucleic acid tests, the like PCR and AAT, if you have a very small amount of virus being shed, that could be plenty to infect somebody else, but definitely not enough to be detectable easily with these antigen tests. So negative, and I took another one. What is today? Today is Mercredi. So I took another one Monday, and was positive. And that one, I have a bunch of sterile cotton swabs. So I did the nostril thing. My throat was still the sorest part, so I took one of my sterile swabs and got the back of my throat, mixed them all into the little tube, homogenized it with the swabs, popped it, 3 drops, and pretty well, immediately as stuff was going by, I could see like a ghost of a line in the tea. Wasn't, like definitive, but I was like, am I imagining that? And then like 10 minutes later, it was pretty clear. 15 minutes later, when it was fully developed, it wasn't like the strongest positive response that you would see in one, but it was definitely good enough to know, like, yeah, there's no ambiguity here. I've got it. And between that and the symptoms, is like, I feel pretty confident that that's this. So I'm calling this episode Plague, not because this is a plague or because I don't know the difference between like Yersinia pestis and COVID-19, but because another former employee used to call it that, and it is kind of a plague, and it's kind of an unnecessary plague. It's something that it's like, I see a thing that people say on Twitter every once in a while, which is like, about the saying, avoid it like the plague. Well, apparently people don't avoid the plague. They don't it's just so dumb, like so preventable. And the thing that kills me is also like if you do these right things, um, first off, the old CDC metric, rather than just being red everywhere, would start turning green because we would actually have it under control. And then when you did that, you could actually have a threshold where you're like, okay, well, if the level of transmission in this community is below this level, then we actually can take off the masks and we can do the stuff that people are doing anyway now. And if you just have that kind of objective measure, like instead of that, the way they did this, it was so subjective and arbitrary. It took so much time to get people to even say that masks worked or were a good idea. And then, they pulled back I mean, just like it's a master class in how to fuck up public health. The messaging was so inconsistent. The, the, just the information getting out was fucked up. The amount of stuff, and this is even before they changed you could see like Joe Biden is looking at that thing. He's like, oh, their map is red. That doesn't look good for me. I want to be, the anti-plague president. So I'm going to change the metrics. So, just going to lean on that CDC director. And, I understand like the president is telling you to do stuff and is leaning on you. It's hard. But this is an abject failure as well of her. And it's a shame. Like she should have stood up to him and she should have said, like, no, we're not going to change this shit. This is the metric. If you want a green map, do these things and you'll get your green map. But yeah, I mean, it annoys me because it's so clear to me that this is a dude who doesn't really care, doesn't really listen to the experts. I mean, he's a guy who cheated on, he's a cheater. He's a plagiarist. He's not an honest person. And I feel like, when people have that in their nature, when people do this kind of stuff, they do it serially. And I mean, it's not like there was one data point in the 80s when he did this stuff. It's many data points. He's not grown. He's not, it would be different if you kind of said like, okay, I really feel embarrassed about having done this and I'm going to be better and, like worked on it and all this kind of stuff. But he never did that. He just kind of like let it slide in the past, let enough time separate him, and then got past it. And we got to a point in society where people are like, oh, that's fine. Who cares? I mean, which to me is a just moral failing. It's a terrible thing that our society looks at that and thinks that's cool. That's fine. It's something I've complained about a lot, but just like the idea that plagiarism is okay, the idea that lying is okay. And it's not a shameful thing. It's not a thing. I mean, I complain about Trump all the time, but Biden is just as much of a fucking liar. And it just bums me out that you have these people who were very anti-Trump. I'm in no way being pro-Trump or saying anything good about Trump. I'm saying Trump is a fucking horrible piece of shit. Fuck Donald Trump. And the bar that he set is subterranean. And Joe Biden only debatably clears that bar. I know plenty of people who insist that he doesn't. And frankly, I can't argue with them that much because I don't think that it's that clear that he does. It's such a pathetic thing. It's so sad. And this is just where we are. That these things, like these are the two. And then you see people looking at this kind of situation and they're like, I got in an argument with a data guy today. Well, air quotes data guy, in the same sense that Nate Silver is a data guy, But this is somebody who's a reporter, air quotes journalist, like so many people who claim to be journalists. It's pathetic, but journalism is. There's a reason it's called the fourth estate. It's an essential part of a functioning democracy to have actual journalism. And instead you get these people who just don't. I mean, the worst thing about somebody like this is does a little bit of research, does have a little bit of data, but still is not doing enough research or going past the superficial surface level to really get to the underlying reality of things. And so many people don't even, like they just sit there and transcribe whatever the cops say, and they just amplify that. That's their air quotes journalism. But this guy was looking at something, and he's like, well, Joe Biden's approval is the lowest among the youngest population, and that's weird because the youngest population is the most democratic. And he was baffled by this. And I'm baffled by some of the stuff that people are baffled by. Like, I do get that you have, it is difficult when you have a cognitive bias or you come in with some preconceived notions of something, and that is charging how you're viewing things. And then when everything you view isn't that, like I've had that experience where you have that expectation bias and it keeps you from seeing obvious things. I get it. But at the same time, like this dude had multiple people trying to explain this to him. And the thing is, yeah, it's true. If you look at the party affiliation by age, the youngest populations are the most democratic or democratic leaning. That is absolutely true. It's a statement of fact. It's measurable. It's what the polls show. They're also the same ones who have single digit approval of, I was going to call them Trump. That's how similar they are. I can't keep them apart. Of Joe Biden. Now, he was baffled. Like, how does the most Democrat? And he's like trying to attribute this to propaganda or some bullshit. And the thing is, it's not that it's really not that complicated. It's not that hard. You have the youngest population, and yeah, it's true. The youngest population of the two majority parties, they do skew Democratic. But the thing is, both parties suck. And the thing that is just infuriating is like you have this population who could very easily be your voters. This is what it just makes you want to scream at the fucking party, because the Republicans are poised to, just take over and rat fuck us horribly. Like they have this Supreme Court that's just doing decision after decision, not just Roe, but all these horrible things. And they're going to do more, and they're going to do worse. And they have all of these laws that are in place across the country to fuck with democracy and to essentially do everything they can to retain minority rule, and not in the good sense. Just, like in the sense of they're the smaller population of the country, and yet they'll maintain control of not just the state legislatures, but our federal government. And it's depressing as fuck, because you have the Democrats who they have the potential. Like, you have this giant population of people who are just like, please give me something to vote for. And the fucking Democrats won't protect voting rights. They won't do a goddamn thing about the environment. I mean, they'll like occasionally they'll put like a little sprinkling of like tens of billions of dollars in something, and then you look at it and it sounds like, oh, this is for, it's not very much, but it's, and then you actually look at it and it's just like some corporate handouts or some bullshit. It's not actually doing anything to minimize carbon, or anything that they could. It's just fucking annoying. And then, I mean, gas prices are high. So what is the solution? Let's open up the strategic reserves. And the strategic reserves, they're there for a reason. You're not supposed to tap into them randomly for, this kind of thing, because oil gets too high. B, oil being high is not the case. Oil being high is not the reason gas is high. The reason gas is high is because the refineries can charge a lot, and they actually like the Republicans, so they want to blame Biden. And they also are getting windfall profits, and the fucking Democrats who are in power aren't doing anything to tax them or to stop them. So they get like $80 billion in profit and just pass that off as stock buybacks. So their wealthy owners get more money out of it. And so Biden's going to try to put a moratorium on gas tax, which is not that much per gallon. So it's like, it's not nothing, but it's not that much. It's not the thing that's driving the cost. It's not enough to have a severe impact on the cost. In fact, it's a small enough amount that you probably wouldn't notice the difference. And in fact, it should be significantly more. What they could do instead is do stuff to incentivize, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have that truck. Maybe you don't need that fucking giant ass truck that takes 20 gallons of gas and costs $100 plus to fill the tank. Why don't you use some of this money, free money that we're giving you, to buy a more efficient car, or live someplace where you can use fucking public transportation, or let's build public transportation. Now, yeah, there's a long lead time for that, but if you have a walkable city with good public transportation, like I was just in San Francisco, you can walk in that city. I've walked all the way across, all the way up and down. Um, I've walked pretty much around the whole city. It's not that hard, you know. It's not that far. The main part of the city is very walkable. They have trains which are okay, kind of disappointing. Diesel too, which is, but they're still okay. They have a lot of buses that are decent. Bus routes come often enough. You know, streetcars and all this kind of stuff. It's not a bad city, and you could do so much better in so many other places, and yet people won't fucking do it. And this is the kind of thing where it's like, okay, well, you have two problems. You have the fucking climate catastrophe, and you have high gas prices. Turn those two problems into a fucking solution and go like, hey, here are these things that are going to offset carbon, and they're going to make your life better, and they won't do that. They won't fucking do it. They won't do anything about drug prices, really. I mean, they do the things that they do. It's infuriating, because it's like, okay, we have school shootings, so they come up with this bullshit bipartisan thing. Doesn't really do very much. Would barely. It's not that it's zero, right? It's something, but it's really not much, and it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't even really address the problems, and yet it's something where they can go, okay, we got to check on the box, and then the boomers who want to vote for them can come in and they go like, hey, yeah, they, and then the young people who are looking at that are like, that was nothing. That was not nearly adequate. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to move the needle. And then the boomers are going like, hey, well, why are you ungrateful like little shits? Why are you not? You know, I mean, it's just fucking annoying. It's just irritating. You get the fucking voting rights, fucking all of the stuff to protect free and fair elections that they could do that they're not doing. All the stuff that they're like, Trump showed 1,000 ways to abuse the presidential power, and yet they've done fuck all. They've not, as far as I know, they've not done anything at all to shore up the institution, to limit presidential power, to do anything to kind of rein this stuff in. They've done nothing for, I mean, it's just, you go on and on and on. And it's like, well, I'm shocked that the approval of Biden is as high as it is, even among this group where it's in the sort of, single digits. It's sad. It's just fucking sad. You have such a low bar. You have so many things you could do. And I mean, it's like, okay, we have student loans. So put the student loans on pause. Actually, I guess Trump put the student loans on pause, which again, I'm not in any way praising Trump. I'm saying Biden is worse than Trump in this metric. He's going to unpause them, and instead of doing anything really about them, the rates are going way up, and they're going to give like this little $10,000 conditional means tested, like, okay, well, if you're not making too much, then we're going to give you this little pittance. And it sounds good, and it does. To be fair, there are a lot of people who it will help, but there are an awful lot of people also who it will not move the needle for. It's like, for me, 10% or $10,000 is like, what is it, like less than 5% of my student loans. And you have the interest rates going up, you have, and they're going to use that as an excuse to turn loans back on, which means every month again, it's going to be like $1,000 for student loan payments. And I'm supposed to feel happy about the 10K thing. Probably not. And I'll tell you, I don't feel bad about having gotten a PhD. I don't feel bad about having, and in fact, if I was back there, I probably would do the same stuff because the student loans made it easy for me to go to school and not have to, like work. I worked, well, I mean, worked obviously as a student, but I didn't work another job in addition to that. I did that one semester. I worked, actually, I guess it was a full time job and was a student, and that sucked. That sucked. It was really not good. And it also, like, the crazy thing is, like, I mean, I was making a decent amount. I was doing some lab work, but it didn't really pay that much compared to my tuition. And that was before tuition really exploded at ASU. It didn't really cover my cost of living and any of that stuff. And yet it was like full-time work plus going to school plus the homework, and it was just like there's not enough time to do this stuff. I mean, it's easy to understand why some people struggle so much because it's just not practical. Um, you can certainly do it. I know people who've done it, but I don't recommend it. I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it should be a requirement. And in a real country, it wouldn't be a requirement because they would actually have this stuff covered. Um, so yeah, it just irritates me. And then it's going to be like, well, why aren't you grateful for that $10,000 that they go, okay, first off, the $10,000 is not that much. Second, if I was making a little more, I wouldn't get that $10,000. Third, yeah, and this is the big thing, the $10,000, it's kind of like a con because the increase in interest rates and the loans coming back online are going to more than offset that $10,000 almost overnight. So it's like, yeah, okay, it's a bullshit thing. And especially given that fucking Biden could sign away all of it if he wanted to, using the same power. And it's annoying. It's just annoying. I'm just fucking annoyed. I'm annoyed with him on this fucking COVID situation. And again, yeah, I could have not gone on my business trip, and I could have done, but also we could have a fucking public health policy. Yeah, I was gonna say a better one. I'm just gonna say any because we fucking don't. It's pathetic. Like, we're at the point, honestly, where we might as well not have a fucking CDC, and that's embarrassing. And that the fact that I would say that, I'm somebody who really believes in institutions. There was a time when I thought about working for the CDC. When I was in undergrad and grad school for my master's, working on microbiology and virology and immunology, I was thinking like, oh, CDC or USAMRIID or something like that. It sounded cool. It sounded like a thing I wanted to do. And now I'm sitting here like, well, I mean, you might as well, if we didn't have, this is the thing. If we didn't have a fucking CDC, the situation with the pandemic would not be that much worse. In fact, it might be basically the same. And that is such a failure. That's such an inexcusable, it's such a shame, it's such a disgrace. And it doesn't need to be this way. It shouldn't be this way. And it's just fucking infuriating. Yeah. And how do you build back from that? It was bad enough when Trump fucked with the CDC. It was bad enough when Trump fucked with the WHO. And now you have, like, could have come back. Remember Build Back Better? That bullshit? Could have come back, but instead you have Biden kind of, oh, Trump's already, like, pushed the boundaries. I'm just going to push him even more. And that's the thing. I'm not even exaggerating there. Trump drew on a fucking map. He didn't even have the OSHA or whoever, OSHA. I'm trying to say, fuck, this is embarrassing. He didn't have NOAA. NOAA has ocean in it, and then ocean became ocean. But he didn't have NOAA fuck with the map. He fucked with the map. Biden had the CDC fuck with the map. Think about that. Think about how bad you have to be to not be a clear slam dunk over fucking Donald Trump. Like the biggest fucking piece of shit in the planet. And Biden barely, arguably, debatably better. It's infuriating. And then you want to know why why Biden has a, what, 6 or 7% approval rating among younger people. It's like, I'm shocked that it's that high. Anyway, um, the one thing that, like, this has been an interesting disease course because I've had diseases before, obviously, and this one I keep going back and forth between feeling pretty good and feeling pretty shitty. And the biggest thing is just that, I'll be like, I'm still going to my meetings and things, Zoom, not like in person exposing people. Not that I could because we're fully distributed anyway, but I'm still going to those meetings. And at the beginning of the meeting, I'm feeling pretty good. And then at the end of the meeting, it's just taking a lot out of me. I just don't have the energy. And you can probably, I don't feel, I mean, I felt more drained in some of these videos just from being tired. I'm not, I'm not tired right now. I am holding in my coughs. So pretty soon I'm gonna have to bounce because otherwise I'm gonna cough a lot. But yeah, it's been interesting. I am on antivirals, so I'm fucking hoping that helps. I'm a little nervous, honestly, because I'm like halfway through the course, and I'm still definitely, you would like to think you get halfway through your antibiotics, you're feeling a lot better. I'm feeling better, but I definitely feel like if you did a viral titer, it's not going to be that low. So what scares me is, like, do I get to the end of the course of antivirals, and if it's not knocked out, granted it's a few more days, so hopefully that's enough. But if it's still there, then you could imagine, oh, resurgence, and now I don't have antivirals. I fucking hope that doesn't happen. We'll see. But anyway, don't recommend this. Don't do it. Avoid it. It's not good. If we had a fucking non-piece of shit Center for Disease Control or president that was worth a damn, I wouldn't have this shit, and a lot of people wouldn't have died from it. And it's really just fucking annoys the shit out of me. It irritates me too, because it's like our the two-party system. Like, not to bitch too much about this, but the duopoly is so ingrained and embedded into the laws. It's so, like, in order to have a third party that's viable with our voting system, you really need just a black swan kind of candidate, like somebody who somehow has mass appeal that crosses really both parties, is able to pull from both of the major parties, get votes from them. And even then, like, just getting ballot access is really non-trivial. Like, the Greens don't have ballot access in Arizona anymore. And I mean, it's that part is sad. You have this People's Party thing, which at one point in time I thought might be a good thing, and now it's just like a fucking joke. They have Jimmy Dory, whatever the fuck his name is. God, I don't really want to get into that one, but they're having him be the 2024 candidate, which is weird because, like, they're not even on as many ballots as the Greens are. So, good luck even getting the Green numbers, and the Greens have no numbers. I mean, you look at even like a Nader year, and it's just not much. They just can't pull that much because we have plurality voting. And so you instantly, any rational person understanding the voting system sits there and has to think, well, okay, I really want to vote for this person, but I don't think they can win. And I can only vote for one. I've got 3 options. So if I vote for them, then I take away a vote for here, and then this other one that I really hate is bad. So you start doing strategic voting. Now, I guess Arrow's impossibility theorem and some of these other theorems do about social choice do say that any voting system has strategic voting. It's annoyingly not a thing you can get rid of, but ours is like the worst situation, or it's not the worst, but it's one of the worst ones you can have. And if you had some other voting system, I really like approval voting, but approval or ranked choice or fucking, like there are 1,000 of them. It doesn't matter. None of them are perfect. But if you had one of these, um, you could have a third party. If you had a black swan candidate, you could have a third party. I mean, it has happened in the past, but when it's happened, when things like the Whigs have happened, or these changes where we used to have these other parties and then they became the ones that they are, or got replaced. When these kinds of things happened, um, the duopoly wasn't so entrenched, and now it's just so entrenched culturally and legally in every state. There are things that make it much harder to run as a third party, and not just ballot access, although that one is a big one. So to really address this, you need to go basically to every state, or at least all the major states, um, and get legislation passed to fix it, which is hard. And then you can start thinking about it. Or you need magical black swan candidate, which is really hard. Um, or you need to take over the other parties, one of the other parties. It's an annoying thing actually, because you talk to people and they get like, I get where you're coming from when you're sitting there going like, oh, we're just gonna have a third party and we're just gonna, and you don't want to run with the Democrats because the Democrats suck. And I agree, the Democrats suck, and I'm not even advocating running with them right now. But I am saying, like, if you, it's very easy to suggest certain things when you don't understand how fucked up the situation is, and when you understand it, it's like, it's a lot of fucking work to, even if you somehow could cut the Gordian knot, it's a lot. And if you try to go through like a normal process of trying to do it, it's years and years on a massive scale, and not something you can just do in one cycle. Yeah, so it's irritating. Anyway, I don't know. I'll restrain myself from going further on that. But with that, thank you, as always. That Jimmy fucking son of a bitch is an anti-vaxxer, I just remembered, which is one of the reasons that I've got this. So thanks. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Um, and all of your little shithead fans. I suspect / hope that I will be doing much better the next time I record one of these. Not that this is as bad. This is, again, could be worse. I think I'm so far pretty lucky, but again, we'll see. With that, thanks. Zaijian.